Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating framework designed specifically for the modern age. I mean, we're living in this era of rapid, unprecedented disruption, especially with the massive explosion of AI recently. And the big question on literally everyone's mind is, how do you not just survive but actually thrive when the ground is constantly shifting right beneath your feet? Well, today we're exploring the Psychotech Human Operating System. It is a highly systematic, engineered approach to building absolutely unbeatable resilience and strategic clarity. Let's get into it.
So this right here is the absolute core thesis from Anupam Sharma's framework. Psychotech leaders never give up. They either win or they learn to bounce back. And look, I know that sounds a bit like a motivational poster, but it's actually a completely different operating philosophy. There's this massive misconception out there that highly successful people, extraordinary inventors, transformational leaders, top-tier athletes, that they rarely fail. But the reality is the exact opposite. They aren't the people who avoid failure. They're the ones who accumulate countless failures before ever hitting success. What separates them isn't raw intelligence. It's simply their ability to recover faster than anyone else.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We are going to cover 1. Redefining failure, 2. The bounce-back cycle, 3. Strategic agility, 4. The human operating system, and finally, 5. Building resilience.
Starting with Section 1, Redefining Failure in Leadership, and shifting from emotion to intelligence. Okay, let's dive into this.
Now, there is a stark contrast between two completely different ways of processing the world. Traditional thinking kind of internalizes a setback. It says, if I fail, I am a failure. It turns an event into an identity. But Psychotech Leadership completely rejects that idea. Instead, failure is merely information. Every single unsuccessful attempt is just data. A mistake improves your judgment. An obstacle develops a new capability. You see, failure only becomes an expensive emotional burden when the learning stops. When you shift your mindset to view failure as intelligence, you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And you start asking, okay, what assumption was incorrect? What system needs to be upgraded? You literally shift from emotional suffering directly to strategic learning.
Moving on to Section 2, the bounce-back cycle. We're looking at designing your recovery.
To really understand recovery, you have to understand that in any crisis, there are always two clocks ticking simultaneously. Here is clock 1. The challenge is growing. The longer you sit in emotional paralysis or overanalyze the problem, the larger and more complex that problem actually becomes. That clock is relentlessly ticking.
But right next to it is clock 2. Your response is developing. This is you extracting data, learning, and adapting. And here's the crucial reality. Whichever clock moves faster completely determines the outcome of the crisis. This means that as a leader, your absolute primary focus has to be on reducing your recovery time. Don't ask when things will get easier, ask how you can get stronger before the challenge gets larger.
And this brilliantly illustrates the invisible, 5-step cycle resilient leaders use to beat that clock and systematically process failure into intelligence. First, you observe reality. Not worse than it is, not better, just the facts. Second, you understand those facts by separating your emotion from the evidence. Third, you learn by challenging your assumptions and documenting your mistakes. Fourth, you redesign your systems, your habits, or your strategies based entirely on that new intelligence. And finally, step 5, you execute again immediately. This continuous loop takes all the sting out of failure and turns it into a literal machine for momentum.
All right, Section 3, Strategic Agility and Clarity. This is the oxygen of sustained effort.
So many people fail because they totally confuse stubbornness with genuine commitment. Stubbornness is staying loyal to methods that just aren't working anymore. But notice the vital distinction here. Your mission remains permanent and fixed, kind of like a compass heading. But your methods, they remain incredibly flexible and continuously evolving, like the route you take around a blocked road. This is true strategic agility. You lock in the vision, but you constantly adapt your execution based on the feedback loop of what is actually working in the real world.
To maintain that level of agility, you need radical clarity to prevent cognitive overload. Confusion just drains your energy. So we clear it out with 3 fundamental questions. The first one is simple. Where am I? You have to define your current reality. What are your actual strengths, your actual weaknesses, your resources, and your blind spots right at this exact moment?
The second question focuses your navigation. Where do I want to go? This is where you establish your purpose and your vision. You have to clearly define what the meaningful outcome looks like, so you have a true north to aim for.
And the final question bridges the gap between those two. How will I get there? This forces you to formulate your strategy, lock down the resources you need, and build an execution timeline to turn that vision into reality.
When you put it all together, you get these core components of clarity. Now, why does this matter so much? Because defining these elements resolves uncertainty, and uncertainty consumes a massive amount of mental energy. When you have clarity on your current reality, your vision, and your strategy, it acts as a giant decision filter. Before any big choice, you just ask yourself, does this align with my vision? Does it strengthen my capabilities? If yes, execute. If not, eliminate. It vastly simplifies your leadership.
Section 4, Your Human Operating System. It's time to upgrade to PHOS.
These interconnected dimensions show that we aren't just talking about some generic productivity hack here. We're talking about upgrading your entire internal architecture. Psychology is about mastering your beliefs. Technology is using tools like AI to amplify your judgment. Strategy provides the roadmap. Execution creates the feedback loop. Learning drives your continuous improvement, and purpose sustains your commitment over the long haul. And the cool part is, each dimension feeds directly into the next. Your psychology shapes your behavior, which dictates your execution, which provides learning, which reinforces your psychology. It is a completely self-reinforcing system that acts as a super powerful catalyst for growth.
Okay, Section 5, Building Resilience Through Momentum, the Upward Spiral. Let's move to and see how this builds, because so many people sit around waiting to feel confident before they take action. And honestly, that is totally backward. Confidence without competence is just arrogance. Execution must always be the starting point. Think about it. When you execute and complete a challenge, you build undeniable evidence. That evidence naturally creates self-belief. That self-belief unlocks the courage to take on even bigger actions, which in turn builds greater competence. It's an upward spiral. You don't chase confidence, you build competence, and the confidence naturally follows.
But to keep that execution going, you absolutely have to win the battle in your mind. Every single obstacle presents two battles. The external battle, changing markets, difficult circumstances, and the internal battle, your beliefs and your self-dialogue. Here's a profound truth from the source material. The external challenge rarely defeats people first. It is almost always their internal dialogue that breaks them. So you have to intentionally redesign your self-talk. Instead of looking at an obstacle and saying, oh man, this is too difficult, you have to reframe it. Ask yourself, what capability is this challenge demanding from me? You literally turn the obstacle into your training ground.
So the crucial point is that successful leaders don't actually rely on fleeting motivation, they rely on momentum. Motivation fades, right? But momentum is a self-reinforcing force. You create it through repeated small wins. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you reduce that internal resistance. Momentum makes resilience easier over time, because movement creates energy, whereas stillness just creates doubt.
So how do you build that momentum? Well, through daily habits that rewire your mind. You clarify your mission every morning. You visualize the outcomes. Throughout the day, you protect your energy and adapt your strategies while executing consistently. And then in the evening, you reflect on the lessons learned and prepare tomorrow's priorities. Small, consistent adjustments drastically outperform massive occasional changes. Habits create your identity, and your identity shapes your destiny.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from the whole Psychotech framework. Every challenge you face is not a test of your human worth. It is simply a test of your operating system. When the operating system is weak, pressure creates collapse. But when your operating system is strong, when you have the clarity, the strategic agility, and those resilience loops firmly in place, pressure creates evolution. You have the power to engineer your own learning and literally shape the disruption around you.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Think about the absolute biggest obstacle you are facing right now, whether in your work or your personal life. Ask yourself, what capability is your current challenge demanding from you? Don't view it as a roadblock. View it as an urgent request to upgrade your operating system. Take this framework, build your momentum, and start turning that pressure into evolution. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.